Hello, this is Marianne from Wise Women Weekdays. I'm on my day 2 of the Camino. I'm still with Michelle, who's on day 3 today. And we've got Genevieve who joined us. And we've been walking together this morning, the 3 of us. And a little bit like the conversation has continued from yesterday.
Yeah, I would say.
And the magic of the Camino brought us together talking about panic attacks. Some of you already know that I did the interview with Alan Branch about panic attacks, and here I am again with 2 ladies who all suffered from panic attacks and different ways how we've learned to deal with it, really. So I don't know if you want to go first, see what your experience.
You start us off, Genevieve.
Oh, you start us off. Yes. You just. What was your experience, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I remember being very young when I actually first had panic attacks, and for me, they were a lot of times associated with when I was trying to go to sleep, and I think in some ways kind of a rejection of the ability to rest. And I would just kind of get into this high alert mode when I was trying to fall asleep and be jolted awake and feel kind of this overwhelming sense of doom almost. And I feel it in my body, so much in my chest and breathing and in my stomach. And I didn't really know the name for it when I was really young, but when I got older and started kind of experiencing that really in the early days of the pandemic again, I recognized it and it felt familiar and terrible kind of in the same way. But since then I've found a lot of different ways to cope with it, which has helped a lot. And I think first thing is always just even recognizing that it's happening and acknowledging that your body's going into that fight or flight and that's something that you need to address and deal with.
I'm curious, what are your tools, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, well, I think just a lot of times a lot of breathing exercises help for me, so I think that can just like kind of quickly regulate my nervous system. So I do like box breathing, other types of breathing exercises, and I find getting outside can be really helpful. A lot of times that's hard to do though when you're kind of in the moment in a panic attack. I also I like taking a hot shower. I find that helps kind of regulate my nervous system as well. But yeah, I've tried a number of different things.
I like that.
Yeah.
I would say much like you, similar experience that it was like I didn't have names for it when I was young, but that's when I would first experience anxiety for sure.
Yeah.
My biggest one, similar when you had said going to sleep, mine was on Sunday nights before school would start on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people talk about Sunday scaries, and now hearing that later in life, I was like, oh my gosh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a lot of that, and then also even around school or being alone. Just different, I can easily recall many memories of having like very visceral anxiety. It's just like debilitating in a lot of ways. But I would say like my first panic attacks happened only like 3.5, 4 years ago is when I like first started experiencing, yes, overwhelm and anxiety I'd experienced as a child and through my life, but more this like, oh my, like, you know, that feeling of like, oh, it's happening. Like, what is this?
Yes.
It's taking over, and that experience of it taking over. And that same thing, I think all 3 of us said today, that like, it feels like an elephant is sitting on your chest, and you're like you can't control it. And then obviously the brain then tells the body that there's this imbalance, this like
Fight and flight.
absolutely, it's like it's telling it it's not okay, and then it continues to spiral down. But yeah, I remember like very clearly my first one was at work in a bathroom, and I just had to, same thing, like do some breathing. But it's every season is different in what it requires and what helps. Most recently, it's like, yes, breath work and meditation and yoga were always things that I depended on, and then though yoga actually started to be more uncomfortable, especially I teach and practice hot yoga, so being in the room and much more of this like opening is sometimes very energetic, and when you're already quite like this, you kind of need this. So finding new ways. And we all said this today of like walking has been such good.
Yes.
So a few friends and I, we would commonly remind each other of like, what's been good medicine today? What's good medicine? So good medicine looks like some days that's just having a warm shower. I really started to implement more of like Chinese medicine in referring to anxiety as more like windy and more like Ayurveda as well. Like those elements help to take kind of that like anxiety out and think of it more like, okay, I'm just windy. I'm very windy. So what would be more grounding, more earth? So doing some things, changing my diet even to like help that as well. Some more grounding spices, more like cinnamon and nutmeg and coriander or cardamom. And I found like starting to shift my lifestyle that way, were new tools I never thought of, and or more fire. So like warm water. So just that.
Yeah, see, I like the cold water. It's very interesting. And also, like my son who had the panic attacks, he overcame it by coming off sugars and cold water. You know, the cold showers. And that's how I started being interested in it. But you were pointed something interesting out with people that come to you about recognizing whether they are like,
Hyper or hypo.
Yeah, hyper or hypo.
Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so what I feel like I've learned over the last few years is, you know, we a lot of people use anxiety or depression interchangeably. They're like, and it's not to say that you only have one or the other or whatever. The experience is varied, but understanding it from a point of like, if you think of it as higher energy versus lower energy, and you can feel that inside, depression or sadness or lethargy, like all of those are like lower, slower. You're more like this too. So I would say that with individuals like that, we typically have to bring up their energy a little bit more for that like window of tolerance. And then people who are like quite like like they can't sit still, you want to like help bring them down. That doesn't always mean slowing down, because sometimes that can be a little bit more alarming to the system, but it's more assessing what the individual needs. And we all talked about that today too. You know, we talked about language and how it's, you know, if you tell someone with anxiety to calm down, that is actually like the worst thing you can do oftentimes, because they want nothing more than to calm down. So just recognizing where you are is like, am I on a hyper, am I hyper energetic right now, or however you want to phrase it, and then having to like slow the energy down to that window of tolerance, or am I, you know, quite slow and low, and do I need to bring it up?
And also you were telling that you've had quite a alarming experience with a therapist, isn't it? So are there enough therapists around that understand really what panic attacks are and you know, how to support people rather than alarm people and push them even further into
And I think there's something to be said, we all talked about this as well today, but this thought of like you can think about anxiety. Like anxiety often is up here already. So something that I like to work with people is like, how can you get back into your body, and more of that somatic approach rather than like, okay, you have either of you are having a panic attack, it's like, okay, calm down, okay, like you're getting them to think,
or get the bag,
or it's like talking.
Why is that happening? I think that can sometimes not be constructive.
Not in that moment,
right?
right? You're in survival. You are quite literally in survival mode. So to do any type of thinking mentally, like energetically, why would we stay up there? It's like, how can we get the individual back in their body? One of my favorite ones, and I do a lot of public speaking and a lot of conferences and workshops and stuff, and I still to this day, even after doing this for 10 years, I get nervous, like very nervous, and I kind of go into this state before, but now one practice I really like, and actually I'll even do it with people before I start whatever I'm speaking, is So looking around, so even with us right now, it's like find 5 different colors.
I do that one too.
Yeah.
See 5 things, hear 5 things, smell 5 things,
Yeah.
touch 5. Or actually, I think do you do the number decreases for each
I
one?
decrease,
Yeah.
But I'll even do it as like 5 different colors. Close your eyes,
Yeah.
and then what do you see? And then 4 different sounds. Smells and this the same. Sounds and then like tactile.
Yeah.
But a lot of them I'll get to do them with their eyes closed if they're comfortable with
That's
it.
great.
Just because then you're like, okay, because when you're having an anxiety or panic attack, you're already so stimulated. Your
Right.
system's like, so.
But also it can have that static feeling of like you're not picking up on kind of the individual sensory things around you. It's all kind of blurring together into that overwhelm state.
Yeah. So it's a good way to distract the mind and bring it somewhere else temporarily. Yeah. There's so many techniques.
And like what I said, when I was, in my middle, 23, just a new GP or general practitioner who sent me to a body therapist who just worked with me breathing and grounding and feeling how my body goes from the feet up. And that just changed so much for me. It just really, like in just 7 weeks, I became a different person. And the fact that they, because it stopped me, so I started having them. I was actually playing in a marching band, and we were on television, and I just walked straight to the camera, and I know I had my first panic attack, and I just with my instrument like that, and oh my god, and that's when I first panicked. And so again, it's a stress. There was a lot of stress, but then, slowly, in the end, I couldn't stay in the marching band, which I loved doing. So I left that. Then you go into a lift, and you get one in a lift, and you don't go in a lift, and then it's an elevator. It's the escalators and the squares. So I wouldn't go across squares anymore, and it's just like your world gets so small.
Yeah,
It's really so
you're trying to avoid all the things that can.
And for anyone listening to you, I feel like it's really important to note, and we all 3 of us said this, that there's a lot of like guilt and shame associated with an experience like that, whether it be you feel isolated in the experience, like no one else understands that or no one else knows, or like myself and even you guys too, it's like when you work in that industry, you're like, I should be able to navigate this. I shouldn't, and then we shit on them. We shit on ourselves.
The shoulds are so dangerous.
They are, and that guilt and shame and everything on top of what you're already experiencing is just.
I think for me it was the people not understanding, because people haven't had any of them. They just don't understand, and they just think, well, just go over it. Just go over
relax.
it. Just relax. Just go and
don't
do
think
it.
about it. You're like,
just go
thank
do
you.
it.
I've never thought of that. Brilliant.
The worst is when you're the one giving those messages to yourself, and you're saying, just relax, just calm down. I think that can even be more harmful than hearing that.
You have to be your own best friend in those situations. Like how that saying of like, how would you talk to your best friend if the thoughts that you're having and the way that you're talking to yourself is in that way? Like, how would you talk? Would you say this to your best friend?
And it's interesting. The walking is like in transactional analysis. They talk about pacing. When people get nervous when they have like a talk, they pace. So the body automatically wants to walk. It's kind of to
release of energy.
Yes.
There is even like walking therapy is what it's called. So no surprise that we're all here.
It's very interesting. And again, yesterday we were talking about the magic of the Camino is meeting, like-minded people. And so again, we had another, 4+ hours today just talking about, about fascinating things in our lives and how our lives have been similar in that level of, experiences.
And you bond so quickly. That's
for sure.
Something too.
Cut through all the surface level things.
I don't want to know how let's talk.
So it's really good. So is there any anything you could like give a tip for somebody, something that really helped you?
Good question. I think be willing to try multiple things. I think that's like the biggest tip I would give if you're struggling with anxiety or panic attacks. I think kind of like what you were saying, what serves you or helps one day might be different from another day, and also different things work for different people. So there's no like I think one solve or quick fix, recipe or whatever you want to call it. I think being willing to just like try a lot of different like strategies and tools and find what works in a given moment really helps.
Yeah, because you went into talking therapy, didn't you?
I did.
And you find that helpful?
I did. I think what it did for me was one, I think helped when I was in kind of non-anxious state to dig into some of those questions about like why is this happening, what are kind of the underlying roots of this, and it also helped me to build out that toolkit and find so many different ways I probably wouldn't have encountered on my own to manage anxiety and ways to kind of shape my relationship with it. But like I was saying earlier, I think there's only so much you can do in talk therapy, and so much of I think any sort of like mental health journey is also really about just like putting things into practice and taking accountability for your own life and everything. And so I found that was a huge piece of it too. I think therapies can be great, but it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Yeah. And we have the thing in common that talking therapy was not really for us. So I got it through body therapy. I did see a counselor at some point, and I just still see this man sitting in front of me and then thinking like, really? You know, and I leave the session and I feel worse than I came in. You know, it's just like, and for me it's when I started doing the body work that's really embodying, grounding, and getting out of my head rather than getting into my body.
Right, that more somatic practice. Yeah, I would say for me, if I were to tell like my younger self, is that like there's nothing wrong with you. First and foremost, it's like this is okay to have this experience, and that's to like any experience, because I think we do that whole like, oh, this is wrong, I'm broken, what's wrong with me? I have to figure out what it is, I have to fix this. You're not broken, nothing's wrong with you. You're just at a new level. You've never been here before. And that kindness piece is like really, really important. It sounds maybe fluffy, but it's like you really need to dig in and be your own advocate and your own best friend in that kind of area. But yeah, that awareness piece. And then like working with trusted professionals, I think is a really big thing. We all three of us talked about that today, is like working with someone that can actually hold space for you. You know, sometimes friends and family and whoever don't understand what you're going through, so those aren't the people to seek out and talk to. It's like, can you work with a trusted professional and or just like a trusted individual who knows how to hold space? And there's such a difference between listening, you know, and then someone saying like, oh yeah, me too, and here's my stuff, here, blah, like I'm gonna puke on you is what I call it. Because a lot of people don't take responsibility for their own energy, but I would say if you can find someone who can sympathize and empathize maybe even with you, or just hold space of to be like, the experience that you're having is valid, which it is, it always is, but you're safe, and then kind of go from there.
Absolutely.
It's very eye-opening, and it I said this today when we were walking, is it makes you stronger, and it makes you like have this deeper connection with yourself and with others when you do find people who have experienced something similar. So yeah.
Yes. Anything else you want to add? No?
I think that covers it.
Yes, that
I
covers
think
it.
so too. Yeah, we're sore. We're very
Yes,
sore.
we're all, my shoulders.
Yeah.
So we walked quite a few miles today already. We've got a little bit to go.
Yeah.
About an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, walking to go.
Yeah.
Put our shoes back on.
Yeah.
We slept in the same room last night.
Yes. It was a really
And
good
it was
hostel.
really nice, we
Yeah.
had a great hostel, but tonight we're all in separate places.
Yes.
And well, hopefully we see each other
Yes.
again.
Temporarily going our separate
Yes.
ways.
Yes, and this is the Camino.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Asking us.
Yes.
Having a conversation.